Simply, cyclone means a coil of a snakes. It is just like a rotation of the earth. Its structure is in shape of a coiled motions or in a circular motion. It is have a just like a human being, it has a center eyes. In meteorology, a cyclone is an area of closed circular fluid motion rotating in the same direction as the earth. The cyclones and polar low lies within the small mesoscale. Cyclones have also been seen on the other planets outside of the earth, such as Mars and Neptune. Types of cyclones. There are 6 main types of cyclone. First one is the polar cyclone, polar low cyclone. Extratropical cyclone is also called as a temperate cyclone, subtropical cyclone, tropical cyclone and mesocyclone. The first one is polar cyclone. A polar, subpolar or arctic cyclone, also known as the polar vortex, is a vast area of low pressures which strengthens in the winters and weakens in the summer season. A polar cyclone is a low pressure weather system usually spinning 1000 km to 2000 km, in which air circulates in a counterclockwise direction in the northern hemisphere and clockwise direction in the southern hemisphere. In the northern hemisphere, the polar cyclone has 2 centers on average. One center lies near Baffin Island and the other over northeast Siberia. In the southern hemisphere, it tends to be located near the edge of the Ross ice shelf near 160 west longitude. When the polar vortex is strong, westerly flow descends to the earth's surface. When the polar cyclone is weak, significant cold outbreaks occur. Second types of cyclone is polar low. A polar low is a small scale, short lived atmospheric low pressure system that is found over the ocean areas polewards of the main polar front in both the northern and southern hemisphere of the earth. During winter, when cold core lows with temperature in the mid levels of the troposphere reach minus 45 degree centigrade is equivalent to minus 49 degree Fahrenheit, move over open waters, deep convections form which allows polar low development to become possible. The systems usually have a horizontal length scale of less than 1000 km and exist for no more than a couple of days. They are part of the large class of mesoscale weather system. Third one is the extratropical. An extratropical cyclone is a synoptic scale low pressure weather system that has neither tropical nor polar characteristics, being counted with front and horizontal gradients in temperature and dew points known as baroclinic zones. Next one is the subtropical. A subtropical cyclone is a weather system that has some characteristics of a tropical cyclone, since they form initially extratropical cyclones which have colder temperature aloft than normally found in the tropics. The sea surface temperature required for their formation are lower than the tropical cyclone threshold by 3 degrees Celsius or 5 degree Fahrenheit, lying around 23 degrees Celsius. Tropical cyclone. A tropical cyclone is a storm system characterized by a low pressure center and numerous thunderstorms that produce strong winds and flooding rains. A tropical cyclone feeds on heat released when moist air rises, resulting in condensation of water vapors contained in the moist air. Mesocyclone is a vortex of air 2 km to 10 km in diameter within a convective storms. Air rises and rotates around a vertical axis, usually in the same direction as low pressure systems in both northern and southern hemisphere. They are most often cyclonic, that means associated with a localized low pressure region within a severe thunderstorms. Such storms can feature strong surface winds and severe hails. Mesocyclone often occur together with updrafts in supercells where tornadoes may form. Causes of cyclones. Cyclones are caused by atmospheric disturbance around a low pressure area distinguished by swift and often destructive air circulation. They are usually accompanied by violent storms and bad weather. The air circulates inward in an anticlockwise direction in the northern hemisphere and clockwise in the southern hemisphere. In India, cyclones are classified due to the wind speed and damage capacity, the strength of the associated winds, storm surge and exceptional rainfall occurrence. Cyclones are classified into 5 different levels on the basis of wind speeds. They are further classified into the following categories according to their damage capacity. In the first category, the wind speed is calculated in kilometers per hour and damage capacity. Wind speed in kilometers per hour for the first category is designed 120 to 150 and damage capacity here is minimal. In the second category, the wind speed is slightly higher than the first one, that means from 150 to 180, and its damage capacity will be considered as a moderate. In the third category, 180 to 210, its wind speed is indicated in kilometers per hour, its extensive damage. In the fourth category, the wind speed is 210 to 250 kilometers per hour and its damage capacity indicated extreme case, and in the last category, which is above the 250 wind speeds and its damage capacity is catastrophic conditions called as. Cyclone factors. The formation of tropical cyclone is the topic of extensive ongoing research and is still not fully understood. While 6 factors appear to be generally necessary, tropical cyclone may occasionally form without meeting all of the following conditions. In most situations, water temperature of at least 26.5 degree centigrade, which is equivalent to 79.7 degree Fahrenheit, are needed down to a depth of at least 50 meters. Water of this temperature cause the overlying atmosphere to be unstable enough to sustain convection and thunderstorms. Another factor is rapid cooling with height, which allows the release of the heat of condensations that power a tropical cyclone. High humidity is needed, especially in the lower to mid troposphere. When there is a great deal of moisture in the atmosphere, conditions are more favorable for disturbance to develop. Low amount of wind shear are needed as high shear is disruptive to the storm circulations. Effects of cyclones. Effects of tropical cyclone. The main effects of tropical cyclone includes heavy rain, storms, strong winds and landfall and tornadoes. The destruction from tropical cyclone depends mainly on its intensity, size and its location. Tropical cyclone act to remove forest canopy as well as change the landscape near coastal areas by moving and reshaping sand dunes and causing extensive erosion along the coast. Even while inlets, heavy rainfall can lead to mudslides and landslide in mountainous area. How does a cyclone affect us? A cyclone causes heavy floods. It uproots electricity supply and telecommunication lines. Beside this, roads and rails movements comes to halt because flood damage rail tracks and beaches roads. Seaport stop work due to high wind, heavy rains and poor visibility. Sometimes ships overturns or are washed ashore. The high speeds winds bends and plucks out trees and plants. A cyclone tears away wall sidings and blow off roof of houses. Houses also collapse and people are rendered homeless. In villages, kacha houses get blown away. The speeding wind cause loose metals and wooden sheets to fly, turning them to potential killers. Broken glass pieces can cause serious injuries. The flood water can turn the field salty. Bridges, dams and embankments suffer serious damage. Flood wash away human beings, animals and make water unfit for drinking. They can be outbreak of diseases like cholera, jaundice or viral fever due to intake of impure water. Water gets contaminated because of floating crops of animals and human beings, and mixing of sewage, stored food supply get damaged. Cyclone mitigations. Cyclone mitigations mainly in terms of risk mapping, assessment and analysis. Various related science and discipline on the subject. A cyclone risk mitigations and preparedness framework can be presented in the shape of the following diagrams like risk mapping, assessment and analysis. The first and probably the most complex task of cyclone mitigation is to map the hazards, risk and vulnerability of cyclones at all levels, analyze and assess the level of risk and monitoring it continuously. Atmospheric and remote sensing science have made a huge progress in the understanding of the phenomena of cyclones. Satellite images can spot the development of low pressure zone, Doppler radars can track them down and instrumental aircrafts can reach the cyclone ice wall and spiral bands to transmit data on wind velocity, pressure and moisture content of the low pressure zones. Such maps are now available at a regional, district and even sub-district level in most of the countries. Second is structural and non-structural types of mitigations. Every country and community has to decide its own mitigation strategy according to its own risk, resources and capabilities. Broadly, such strategies would be of two folds. One is the structural and second one is the non-structural. Structural mitigations measures generally refer to capital investment on physical construction or other development works, which includes engineering measures and construction of hazards, resistant and protective structures and other protective infrastructures. Among the structural mitigation measures, sea walls, slime water, embankments are probably the most effective and capital intensive investment to mitigate the risk of cyclones. Bioshields usually consist of mangroves, palms, bamboos and other trees species and halophytes and other shrub species that inhabit lower tidal zones. Early warning of cyclones and its disseminations to the coastal habitations is an important preparatory measure to reduce the losses of life and property during cyclone. Non-structural measure includes awareness, education policies, techno-legal system and practices, training capacities, development, etc. Management practice. What to do before and during cyclones? Have you dwelling checked before a cyclone season start and carry out whatever repair they are needed? Create storm awareness by discussing effects of a cyclonic storms with family members so that everyone know what one can should do in an emergency. This helps to remove fear and anxiety and prepares everyone to respond to emergency quickly. Keep your valuable and documents in containers which cannot be damaged by water. Keep information about our blood group. Store up at least 7 days stocks of essential food articles, medicines and water supply. Keep blankets and clothes ready for making beds. Also keep cotton bandages and several copies of photographs of family members in case they are needed for identification purposes after the storm. Store some wooden boards so that they can be used to cover windows. Keep trees and shrubs trimmed. Remove damaged and decay part of trees to make them resist wind and reduce the potential for damage. Cut weak branches and make wind blow through. All doors, windows and openings should be secured. Continue to listening to warning bulletins and keep in touch with local officials. Keeps radio sets in working conditions. Battery powered radio sets are desirable. Evacuate people to places of safety when desired. Store extra drinking water in covered vessels. During the storms, do not venture out unless advised to evacuate. Keep monitoring the warning. This will help you to prepare for a cyclone emergency. Pass on the information to others. Remember that a cyclone alert means that the danger is within 24 hours. Stay alert. When your area is under cyclone, warning get away from low-lying beaches or other low-lying areas close to the coast. If your house is securely built on high ground, take shelter in the safer part of the house. However, if asked to evacuate, do not hesitate to leave the place. Small and loose things which can fly in strong wind should be stored safely in a room. Be sure that a window and door can be opened only on the side opposite to the one facing the wind. Switch off electrical mains in your houses. Fishermen are advised not to venture out into the sea. They should keep boats and rafts tied up in safe place. Avoid taking shelters near old and damaged buildings or near trees. Do not touch power lines. What to do after the storm? You should remain in the shelter until informed that you can return to your home. You must get inoculated against disease immediately. It is advisable to wait for the all clear message on radios, TVs, network. Wait for emergency relief team to arrive. It may take a little time before relief becomes effective. Stay away from flooded areas. Donate blood. Locating places where dead bodies can be kept until they are disposed of. Organizing clearing up so that normally return as soon as possible. Areas that are generally prone to cyclones. The Indian subcontinent is one of the worst affected region in the world. The disaster potential is particularly high at the time of landfall in the North Indian Oceans, means Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea. due to the accompanying destructive winds, storm surges and torrential rainfall. Cyclone prone areas in India are Gujarat, Odisha and a few parts of southern India. Cyclone in the terms that cover cyclones, hurricanes and typhoons. Therefore, some areas of the world that are cyclone prone includes Australia, northern coastline from northwest to northeast, Indian Oceans to the Coral Seas, the Solomon Islands, Fiji, Philippines, India, Burma, Bangladesh, Gulf of Mexico, Myanmar and Taiwan. I conclude that cyclone is the term used globally to cover tropical weather system in which wind equal or exceed gale force minimum of 34 knots. These are intense low pressure areas of the earth atmosphere coupled system and are extremely weather events of the tropics. Cyclones are characterized by their devastating potential to damage structure, that means houses, lifelines, infrastructure, power and communication towers, hospitals, food storage facilities, road, bridges and culverts, crops, etc. The most fatalities come from storm surges and the torrential rain flooding the lowland areas of the coastal territories. Based on the lesson learned from the cyclones around the world and the advances made in various related science and disciplines on the subject, a cyclone risk mitigation and preparedness framework is a very important part of its management. Every country and community has to decide its own mitigation strategy according to its own risk, resources and capabilities. Early warning of cyclone and its disseminations to the coastal habitations is an important preparatory measures to reduce the losses of life and property during cyclone.